New at 4, we are learning more about two women shot and killed at a North Huntsville apartment complex. Police actively hunting for that killer.
WAAY 31's Maddie McCaffrey joins us live from Bonnell Drive this afternoon. And Maddie, you've spent the day talking with a lot of people who knew the victims.
Yes, Marie, throughout the day, a lot of people have told me that they're still in shock about the tragic homicide that happened Tuesday that took the lives of the two women, Deja Morris and Sequoiya Lamar.
The sound of gunfire erupted in broad daylight. Not one shot, not two, but 13. By the time the echoes faded across Bonnell Drive, two young women lay motionless in their own blood. Their crime, arguing with a neighbor about tires. Their killer, the man who lived just doors away. Their story, cut tragically short at the height of their online fame. At 10:29 a.m. on August 29, 2023, 20-year-old Sequoiya Lamar and her 24-year-old partner, Deja Morris, lay dead in the parking lot of their apartment complex. Their bodies riddled with bullets, their phones still warm from uploading content just hours earlier. The couple had built a following, sharing dance videos, fashion tips, and glimpses into their relationship. Sequoiya, a talented loctician, and Deja, described by friends as athletic and competitive, had become social media darlings. Their chemistry on camera was undeniable, authentic, playful, and relatable. But their neighbor, 23-year-old Tye Deshun Stevens, harbored a growing resentment. What began as a trivial dispute over parking and tires escalated into one of Alabama's most shocking crimes of 2023. He was vibrant, carrying a source of joy and inspiration, Sequoiya's mother would later write, grappling with the senseless loss of her daughter. What drives someone to murder over something so insignificant? How did a parking dispute turn deadly? And what warning signs might have been missed? Welcome to True Crime Malice. If this is your first time here, we dive deep into the cases that shake communities and leave us questioning humanity. Drop your city in the comments, let us know where you're watching from as we unravel this tragic story of social media fame cut violently short. Before they became headlines in a murder case, Sequoiya Lamar and Deja Morris were simply two young women in love, sharing their journey with an ever-growing audience. Their relationship blossomed in Huntsville, Alabama, a city not known for its progressive attitudes, making their open, authentic portrayal of their love all the more impactful for their followers. Sequoiya, just 20 years old at the time of her death, had established herself as a skilled loctician. Her talent for hairstyling, particularly specializing in locks, wasn't just a job, it was an art form she proudly showcased online. Videos of her transforming clients' hair garnered thousands of views, with followers often commenting on her meticulous attention to detail and creative vision. Her work represented more than aesthetics, it was a celebration of Black beauty and culture, something she took immense pride in. Sequoiya wasn't only a vibrant, caring young woman, but also a source of joy and inspiration for those around her. Her mother, Shameka King, wrote in a heart-wrenching GoFundMe post after her daughter's murder. Those who knew her personally echoed these sentiments, describing a young woman whose smile could light up a room, whose ambition seemed boundless, and whose love for Deja was evident in every interaction. Deja Morris, 24, brought a different energy to their partnership. Former classmate Dantrell White, who graduated high school with her in 2018, remembered her as silly, goofy, athletic, competitive. She was just all around a great person. This competitive spirit manifested in playful challenges and games the couple would share online, Deja often taking the lead with her natural charisma and confidence. She was always willing to help others around her, White recalled, still processing the shock of her death. For someone to do that, it's still not making any sense.
I mean, she was like a silly, goofy, a hooper athlete, competitive. She was just all around a great person. So for someone to do that is still not making any sense. I want to give prayers to her family and friends and hope that they heal and process this and just grieve.
In their videos, Deja often took on a more masculine presentation, complementing Sequoiya's feminine energy. This dynamic resonated with many of their followers, who saw themselves represented in the couple's authentic expression of their identities. They weren't playing characters or putting on personas, which made their content all the more compelling. Their rise on social media wasn't meteoric but organic, building a dedicated following through consistent posting and genuine interaction with their audience. They shared fashion tips that showcased their distinct styles, dance videos that highlighted their playfulness, and cooking segments that invited viewers into their home. But it was the glimpses into their relationship, the inside jokes, the tender moments, the way they looked at each other, that truly captivated their audience. The couple didn't shy away from displaying their affection, often canoodling on camera and, according to some reports, flashing cash to let everybody know they were a very happy LGBT couple. In a region where same-sex relationships still face significant stigma, their openness was both brave and revolutionary. Their content wasn't just entertainment, it was representation for young LGBTQ+ individuals in the South who rarely saw relationships like theirs portrayed positively in media. Comments on their videos often expressed gratitude, "Y'all make me feel like I can be myself," relationship goals, "The way you love each other gives me hope." What made their social media presence special wasn't flashy editing or carefully curated aesthetics. It was authenticity. They filmed in their apartment, wore everyday clothes, and spoke directly to their followers as if chatting with friends. This approachability made their tragic end all the more shocking to those who felt they knew the couple personally through their content. Neighbors who knew them offline painted a similar picture. They were young, vibrant, just living their lives, one resident of Bonnell Drive told local news after the shooting. Another described them as quiet neighbors who kept to themselves but were always friendly. The couple's relationship wasn't just for show. Those close to them described a deep bond. Two young women building a life together, supporting each other's dreams, and navigating the complexities of being an openly gay couple in Alabama. Sequoia's mother referred to Deasia as an innocent soul who shared the same tragic fate as her daughter, acknowledging the profound connection the two shared. Their story was one of love, authenticity, and potential, a young couple carving out space for themselves both online and in their community, using their platform to spread joy while being unapologetically themselves. It was a story of possibility and promise, until a trivial dispute with a neighbor brought it to a violent, premature end. August 29, 2023 began like any other Tuesday for Sequoiya, Lamar, and Deasia Morris. The summer heat in Huntsville was beginning to ease with temperatures in the high 80s, a typical late August morning in Alabama. Neither woman could have known that by mid-morning their lives would be violently cut short in the parking lot of their own apartment complex. The couple had been active on social media earlier that morning. While the exact content of their final posts hasn't been publicly detailed, their routine typically included morning updates for their followers, perhaps a glimpse into their breakfast routine or plans for the day ahead. These mundane moments, now frozen in digital time, would become the last traces of their living presence online. Around 10:20 a.m., Sequoiya and Deasia encountered their neighbor, 23-year-old Tye Deshun Stevens, in the parking area of the Bonnell Drive apartment complex. What began as a seemingly ordinary interaction quickly escalated into a heated argument. According to court testimony revealed months later, the dispute centered around tires, a disagreement so trivial it defies comprehension when measured against what followed. The exact nature of the tire dispute remains somewhat unclear in public records. Some reports suggest it involved parking spaces, while others indicate it may have been about tire maintenance or placement. What is clear from court proceedings is that Stevens and the couple were neighbors, and this wasn't their first disagreement. Tensions had been building between them, with the tire issue becoming the flashpoint for what would become a deadly confrontation. One resident of Bonnell Drive who requested anonymity when speaking to local news reported hearing raised voices that morning. "I didn't think much of it at first," they said. "People argue in parking lots all the time. You never think it's going to end like this." Another neighbor, Sar Ball, later told reporters, "There has been enough bloodshed here in Huntsville, Alabama. It's enough." Though not a direct witness to the shooting, his comments reflected the community's shock at how quickly a neighborhood dispute could turn deadly. At approximately 10:29 a.m., according to police reports, the argument reached its breaking point. In a moment of explosive rage, Stevens allegedly pulled out a firearm. What happened next was not a single impulsive act, but a sustained, deliberate attack. Stevens didn't fire once or twice in the heat of the moment. He discharged his weapon multiple times, continuing to shoot even as his victims fell. Between the two women, 13 bullets found their mark. The sheer number of shots fired speaks to the intensity of Stevens' rage, each pull of the trigger a separate decision to continue the assault. Some bullets struck Sequoiya, others Deshun, their bodies crumpling to the pavement as neighbors heard the rapid succession of gunfire and called 911. By the time Huntsville Police Department officers arrived at the 4400 block of Mone'e Drive, responding to reports of shots fired, both women were beyond help. They were pronounced dead at the scene, their bodies lying in the parking lot where, just minutes earlier, they had been standing, arguing, alive. The medical examiner would later document the extensive damage caused by the barrage of bullets. The official cause of death for both women was listed as fatal gunshot wounds by Madison County Coroner Tyler Berryhill. The clinical language of the medical report stands in stark contrast to the violent reality it describes. Two young bodies riddled with bullets, lives extinguished in a matter of seconds over an argument about tires. As officers secured the crime scene, Stevens was nowhere to be found. He had fled immediately after the shooting, setting in motion a manhunt that would span multiple days and jurisdictions. The murder weapon wasn't recovered at the scene, suggesting he took it with him in his hasty escape. By early afternoon, word of the double homicide had begun to spread through the neighborhood and on social media. Friends who had watched the couple's content that very morning were now seeing news reports of their deaths. The dissonance was jarring. How could two vibrant young women, active on social media just hours earlier, now be gone? As investigators processed the crime scene, marking bullet casings and taking photographs, the reality became undeniable. A trivial dispute had escalated to deadly violence in mere minutes, leaving two young women dead and their killer on the run. But the tire dispute wasn't the whole story. According to sources close to the investigation, Tye Stevens had shown a particular interest in Sequoiya before the murders. Some neighbors reported seeing him watching the couple from his window. Others suggested he had made advances that Sequoiya rejected. Most shocking of all, evidence would later suggest Stevens may have been following the couple's social media accounts under a fake profile, obsessively tracking their relationship for months. Was this a crime of sudden rage or calculated jealousy? Drop your theories in the comments below. What do you think really motivated Stevens to pull that trigger 13 times? As Sequoiya and Deshun's bodies were transported to the medical examiner's office, Tye Stevens was already miles away, having fled the scene immediately after the shooting. The Huntsville Police Department quickly identified him as the prime suspect, issuing 2 capital murder warrants for his arrest. By nightfall, his name and photograph were circulating on local news and social media, marking the beginning of an intense manhunt. Investigators believed Stevens might be heading to either Anniston, Alabama, or possibly Columbia, South Carolina. They released information that he could be driving a silver vehicle with an unknown tag, urging the public to report sightings but not to approach him directly. Anyone who sees Stevens should not attempt to make contact, the police statement warned, underscoring the danger he potentially posed. For days, Stevens managed to evade capture, his whereabouts unknown as law enforcement agencies across multiple jurisdictions coordinated their efforts. The U.S. Marshals Service Gulf Coast Regional Fugitive Task Force joined the search, expanding the resources dedicated to finding him. Each passing day heightened tensions in the community, with residents wondering if the killer might return or strike again. Meanwhile, on Mone'e Drive, a makeshift memorial began to form near the spot where the women had been killed. Flowers, candles, and handwritten notes accumulated as neighbors and strangers alike came to pay their respects. "It's still shocking to me," said Dantrell White, Deshun's former classmate. "I'm still trying to process it and figure out everything that's going on at the moment, right now." The ripple effects of the murders extended far beyond the physical neighborhood. Online, where Sequoiya and Deja had built their following, the news of their death spread rapidly. Their social media accounts became digital shrines, with followers leaving thousands of comments expressing disbelief, grief, and anger. Videos that had once showcased their joy and love were now viewed through the heartbreaking lens of lives cut short. For Sequoia's mother, Shameka King, the pain was immeasurable. In a GoFundMe page established to help with funeral expenses, she poured out her grief. "The loss of my daughter has left a deep void in our lives. Her sudden departure has shocked us and left us grappling with grief that is beyond comprehension." Her words captured not just personal loss, but the senselessness of the violence that took her daughter. King referred to Deja as an innocent soul who shared the same tragic fate as Sequoiya, acknowledging the bond between the two women and the double tragedy their families now faced. "We are infinitely grateful for the outpouring of love and support offered by our community thus far," she wrote. "The calls, visits, and messages have provided us with consolation during these dark times." The community response extended beyond online condolences. Vigils were organized, bringing together those who knew the couple personally and those who had only followed them online. At one such gathering, neighbors Sarbal expressed what many were feeling: prayers to the family, just prayers, man, and as much positive energy to the family. "I don't know the residents, they were a little bit younger than me, but prayers to the family, condolences, and let's just stop this senseless violence here in Huntsville, Alabama, because it's enough. I mean, there's been enough bloodshed." Local LGBTQ+ organizations also spoke out, noting that while the motive appeared to be a dispute over tires rather than explicitly about the couple's sexuality, their deaths represented a loss to the community. Some question whether underlying homophobia might have contributed to the intensity of Stevens' reaction, though no official evidence has confirmed this theory. As the search for Stevens continued, the families of Sequoiya and Deja began the painful process of planning funerals for young women who should have had decades of life ahead of them. Their social media presence, once vibrant and active, now frozen in time, a digital memorial to lives and love cut tragically short by senseless violence. After a week-long manhunt that kept Huntsville residents on edge, the search for Tye Deshun Stevens came to an end. On September 6, 2023, the U.S. Marshals Service Gulf Coast Regional Fugitive Task Force tracked Stevens to Anniston, Alabama, a city approximately 100 miles south of Huntsville. The capture occurred without incident, a surprisingly quiet end to a case that began with such explosive violence. The U.S. Marshals Service Gulf Coast Regional Fugitive Task Force apprehended Tye Deshun Stevens, 23, in Anniston, Alabama this afternoon, the Huntsville Police Department announced in a terse update. Stevens will be brought back to Madison County and booked in the jail on the 2 capital murder warrants. Authorities never disclosed exactly how they located Stevens, though law enforcement sources suggested that tips from the public played a crucial role. The Huntsville Police Department publicly thanked the community for its assistance, highlighting how citizen cooperation had helped bring the alleged killer to justice. Stevens was transported back to Madison County and booked into the county jail, where he would remain held without bond, standard procedure in capital murder cases in Alabama. The charges against him were severe. 2 counts of capital murder, each potentially carrying the death penalty in a state known for its aggressive pursuit of capital punishment. In November 2023, Stevens appeared in court for a preliminary hearing where new details about the crime emerged. It was during this proceeding that the full horror of the shooting was revealed. Evidence showed that Stevens had allegedly shot the victims 13 times between them, an excessive display of violence that shocked even veteran courtroom observers. The prosecution presented evidence establishing the timeline of events and the nature of the dispute that preceded the killings. Court testimony confirmed that Stevens and the victims were neighbors and that the argument had indeed centered around tires. The seemingly trivial nature of the dispute, compared to the extreme violence that followed, became a central theme in the prosecution's narrative. Investigators had collected shell casings from the scene, conducted interviews with witnesses who heard the gunshots, and gathered surveillance footage from nearby buildings that captured portions of the interaction before the shooting. The evidence painted a picture of an argument that escalated rapidly, culminating in Stevens allegedly drawing a weapon and firing repeatedly at the two women. The judge determined there was sufficient evidence to send the case to a grand jury, a crucial step in the Alabama criminal justice process. By October 2024, the grand jury returned indictments on 2 counts of capital murder against Stevens, formally moving the case toward trial. In a significant development, prosecutors announced they would seek the death penalty against Stevens. After careful consideration of the facts and circumstances of this case, including the heinous nature of the crime and the taking of 2 innocent lives, the state has determined that the death penalty is appropriate. The district attorney's office stated in a court filing, "The decision to pursue capital punishment underscored the severity with which the justice system viewed the double homicide." Alabama remains one of the states most active in seeking and carrying out death sentences, particularly in cases involving multiple victims or crimes considered especially heinous. As the case progressed through the legal system, Stevens' defense team began exploring possible strategies. Court records indicate they investigated whether mental health issues might have played a role in the shooting, though no formal insanity defense has been filed as of yet. They also sought to suppress certain evidence and statements Stevens allegedly made to investigators after his capture. For capital cases in Alabama, the legal process is deliberately methodical, with multiple required hearings, motions, and appeals built into the system. This means that even with Stevens in custody and formally charged, the path to final justice for Sequoiya and Tye would likely stretch over years rather than months. If convicted of capital murder, Stevens faces only 2 possible sentences under Alabama law: death by lethal injection or life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The severity of the crime, 2 victims killed in a public setting with multiple gunshots, makes this a case where prosecutors believe they can secure the ultimate punishment. Legal experts familiar with Alabama's criminal justice system note that several factors could influence the final outcome. Capital cases in Alabama typically take 3 to 5 years to go to trial, explained one criminal defense attorney not involved in the case. And even after conviction, the appeals process can extend for a decade or more. For the families of Sequoiya and Tye, this extended timeline means their grief is compounded by the slow grinding of the justice system. Each court appearance, each legal filing, each delay forces them to relive the tragedy while waiting for resolution that seems perpetually just out of reach. As the case continues to work its way through the courts, the fundamental question remains unanswered. How could a dispute over something as mundane as tires escalate to the point where 2 young women lost their lives? The legal system can determine guilt and assign punishment, but it cannot fully explain the human capacity for such disproportionate violence. The 13 shots that forever silenced 2 voices that had brought joy to so many, 13 bullets over tires. When distilled to its essence, the murders of Sequoiya Lamar and Tye Deshun expose a devastating truth about human nature: how quickly anger can override reason, how fragile life becomes in the presence of unchecked rage, and how permanently irreversible the consequences. In the parking lot of that Bonal Drive apartment complex, a disagreement that should have ended with harsh words instead ended 2 promising lives. It's a stark reminder that the line between everyday conflict and tragedy can be crossed in seconds, leaving families shattered and communities reeling in the aftermath. The digital footprint left by Sequoiya and Tye continues to resonate across social media platforms. Their videos showcasing love, creativity, and authenticity remain accessible, creating a bittersweet archive of lives interrupted. Followers still leave comments, speaking to them as if they might somehow read the messages from beyond. Perhaps the most powerful legacy of this case isn't just the warning about conflict escalation, but the reminder of what was lost. A young couple who dared to live authentically in a place where doing so required courage. They shared their relationship openly, becoming role models for others struggling with their identity in conservative communities. That representation mattered, and its abrupt end left a void for those who saw themselves reflected in Sequoiya and Diazia's love story. The case also forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about conflict resolution in our communities. How many arguments escalate because people lack the skills or resources to de-escalate? How many lives might be saved if we prioritized teaching these skills as essential rather than optional? As this case moves through the justice system, we're left to wonder, what if someone had walked away that morning? What if a deep breath had been taken? What if 13 bullets had remained unfired? If you found this story impactful, please consider subscribing to True Crime Malice. Each week, we explore cases that challenge our understanding of human behavior and the thin line between everyday life and unthinkable tragedy. What other cases would you like us to cover? Let us know in the comments below.